Welcome to the Secrets of the Bible channel. In a time when miracles and wonders were not foreign to the people of Israel, an unusual story unfolds before us, woven with threads of faith, divine warning, and the humble voice of a creature. This is the story of Balaam and his donkey, a story that transcends time and teaches us about obedience and divine intervention. Before delving into this topic, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate the notification bell so that YouTube notifies you every time we publish a new video. Let's start. In Numbers chapters 22 and 23, the protagonist is not Moses but Balaam, a man who lived near the road along which Israel was slowly approaching the promised land. Like many people's lives, Balaam's story is complex. It is complex because Balaam made bad decisions, not because God's lifestyle and instructions are unclear. At times, he seemed to serve as a spokesman for God, but his actions definitively demonstrated that he was not a man faithful to God. There is some humor in this story, as sometimes happens when people too focused on wealth are blinded to other, more important issues going on around them. And the most important thing for us is that his story continues to have relevance. Today, to understand the meaning of this man's life, let's start with the background of the story of Balaam in the Bible. Next, we are going to recount their actions and the lessons that emerge from them for us today. The first mention of Balaam in the Bible occurs in the mid-15th century BC, with the ancient Israelites who traveled around Edom and defeated the king of Arad, the Amorites, and Bashan. The border nation of Moab feared that they would soon be the next country defeated by this upstart nation led by Moses. King Balak of Moab decided to take immediate measures to protect the people from him. He asked Balaam to help him deal with this threat to his nation. Why did King Balak call Balaam? Well, Numbers chapter 22 verses 5 and 7 explains this. Let's read the biblical story. Therefore he sent messengers to Balaam the son of Beor, at For, which is by the river in the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, A people has come out of Egypt, and behold, it covers the face of the earth, and dwell before me. Come now, I pray you, curse me this people, for they are stronger than me. Perhaps I can wound him and drive him from the earth, for I know that whoever you bless will be blessed, and whoever you curse will be cursed. The elders of Moab and the elders of Midian went with gifts of divination in their hands. And they came to Balaam and told him the words of Balak. We do not know how Balaam came to be esteemed as a prophet or a man with spiritual powers, but Balak certainly knew his reputation. Balaam was definitely not an Israelite. She came from Petor, which was by the river. Early commentators took the river as a reference to the Euphrates, placing Petor, ancient Petru, in modern Syria, near Kobane. It was more than 400 miles from Moab. However, since the recovery in 1967 of the Deir Allah inscription, which may have mentioned Balaam by name, it has been argued that Petor is modern Deir Allah in Jordan, and that the river is the Jordan. This was near Moab. The recovery of prophetic texts of Balaam in 6th century Aramaic at Deir Allah in Jordan shows how famous this man was in the ancient Near East, even centuries after his death. As the story continues, it will become clear that Balaam has some knowledge of the true God. God, the God of Israel, as shown by the specific mention of the Lord in Numbers chapter 22 verse 8, knowledge that went beyond a vague spiritual connection. It is not clear how he came to this knowledge. He is in this sense like Melech and Jethro, men who were not Israelites, but came to some knowledge of the true God. Now, Balaam clearly had a reputation for being able to bless or curse people. Apparently, this ability was based on witchcraft. King Balak assumed that he was someone who practiced magic, as his messengers brought with them some gifts of divination to give to Balaam if he agreed to curse Israel. In Numbers chapter 24 verse 1, it tells us clearly that Balaam had tried to use witchcraft. Let's read the biblical story. But when Balaam realized that the Lord was pleased that Israel should be blessed, he did not resort to sorcery as at other times, but turned his face toward the desert. God's faithful prophets did not practice witchcraft or receive gifts of divination. Subdivination. They were not paid fees for faithfully communicating God's messages. The messages they gave were often unpopular, and it was quite common for them to have to endure the wrath of the recipients to whom they had given the messages. Therefore, Balaam is not a good prophet who turns bad, nor a bad prophet who tries to be good. He's totally alien to Israel's prophetic tradition. He is a foreign pagan. Now, after receiving King Baal's offer to pay him a fee for cursing Israel, Balaam says to his messengers from the king, "Rest here tonight, and I will give you an answer as the Lord speaks to me." It seems that here Balaam is sincerely trying to determine God's will. Apparently you have contact with him. It is interesting to note that God actually communicated with Balaam. Balaam told God the situation, and here in verse 12 of chapter 22 of Numbers is God's response. Then God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them, nor curse the people, for blessed are they." Now there is no doubt that this is a clear and categorical commandment. There was no way to be evasive. Now let's look at Balaam's attitude. In verse 13, "So Balaam got up in the morning and said to the princes of Balak, 'Return to your own land, because the Lord does not want to let me go with you.'" It seems that Balaam is sincere and upright before God. Now, if this were the end of the story, well, we would have to think that this was the truth about him. But King Balak was a tenacious person. He sent again more princes, and more honorable than the others, who came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak the son of Zippor, I beg you not to stop coming to me, for without a doubt I will honor you greatly, and I will do everything you tell me. Come now, curse this people for me." And Balaam answered and said to Balak's servants, "Even if Balak gave me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the word of Jehovah my God to do anything small or great. I beg you now, therefore, to rest here tonight, so that I may know what Jehovah says to me again." Here it still seems that Balaam is a pious man, and we are inclined to approve of his attitude. But after thinking about it, we realize that something is not right here, and that this sounds too good to be true. Well, why did Balaam say what he said? Why did she talk about a house full of silver and gold? Well, he said it because that's precisely what he was thinking about. That is to say, he was greedy and his thoughts went in that direction. It is very obvious. What was happening? She had already received a direct and categorical answer from God. God had already told him not to go. But this man is waiting for the Lord to open the door, a crack for him so he can put his foot in. And if it is possible for him to put his foot in, well, without a doubt, he will enter. He already had God's answer. He didn't need anything else. This is without a doubt an interesting detail. Now watch what happens. God doesn't just do this for Balaam. He has done it for many of his servants, and he will do it for. Even if it is not good for us, dear listener, sometimes God allows us to do what we want to do. Let's read verse 20 of chapter 22 of Numbers. "And God came to Balaam by night and said to him, 'If these men have come to call you, get up and go with them, but you will do what I tell you.'" In other words, God is saying to him, okay, you want to go, and before this matter is over, you will end up going. But if you go, you will have to say what I want you to say. Be careful to do it this way. What we have here is what is known as the permissive will of God. He often allows us to do something that we insist on doing, even when that thing is not his clear and unequivocal will. You will remember that whenever the Israelites murmured, God gave them what they asked for, but he also sent destruction upon them. And sometimes God grants us our request, but at the same time we receive scarcity and experience the feeling of discontent and dissatisfaction for not having truly sought God's will. Let's continue reading verses 21 to 23. "So Balaam got up in the morning, saddled his donkey, and went to the princes of Moab. And the wrath of God was kindled, because he went. And the angel of the Lord stood in the way as his adversary. So he was riding on his donkey, and with him 2 of his servants. And the donkey saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand. And he turned the donkey out of the way, and went into the field. Then Balaam whipped the donkey to make her return to the road." God's faithful prophet lets add nothing to or take away from God's message. They do not compromise God's instructions or try to reach an agreement with the party that opposes God's will. A certain author said, God does not soften the wrong path for him who has extorted permission to follow it. Now, to give further warning to the stubborn Balaam, the angel of the Lord blocked the way while Balaam was riding on his donkey. However, at this point, Balaam did not see the angel of Jehovah. His eyes were dull with the dust, or at least dazzled by the brilliance of the promised promotions. The donkey was spiritually more perceptive than the prophet. The donkey had no spiritual gifts, but he recognized his creator. The prophet had wonderful spiritual gifts, but also a disobedient heart and walk. A certain author said, "Up to this point, Balaam has been portrayed as a man of great spiritual stature, who can meet with God whenever he wants, and whose words have tremendous effects on the destiny of nations." Here, his spiritual blindness and helplessness are revealed. He cannot see the angel of Jehovah standing in his way. However, his donkey did see him and moved out of the way. Then Balaam whipped the donkey to make her return to the road. Let's continue reading verses 24 and 27. But the angel of the Lord stood in a path of vineyards that had a wall on one side and a wall on the other. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, he stuck to the wall and pressed Balaam's foot against the wall, and he spanked her again. And the angel of the Lord passed beyond and stood in a narrow place where there was no way to turn either to the right or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, he fell under Balaam, and Balaam was angry and whipped the donkey with a stick. The donkey, responding to the angel of Jehovah, turned to one side, then to another, and finally sat down to avoid judgment. The turns of the donkey pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. So just as the disobedient prophet suffered, he made the donkey suffer by whipping her several times. The donkey is a perfect image of a simple, unspectacular, but obedient servant of God. The donkey was sensitive to God's direction, a sting to the disobedient, and a victim of the wrath of the wicked. Now, the unusually difficult circumstances of this trip might have suggested to Balaam that his trip was not from God. However, Balaam probably took it all as an attack from the enemy and used the circumstances to strengthen his hope that God wanted him to work as a paid prophet. Frederick Brotherton Meyer reflected on the merciful ways God can hinder our path. You were trying to go your own way and reap the rewards of injustice when suddenly you were stopped in your course. One more step would have brought you to the edge of the precipice, but suddenly you were stopped by that which prevented you from moving forward. Don't curse the obstacle. Beneath him is the gentlest angel of God, striving to separate you from your evil purpose. Let's continue reading verses 28 and 30. Then the Lord opened the mouth of the donkey, and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you, that you have beaten me these 3 times? And Balaam answered the donkey, "Because you have mocked me. I wish I had a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you." And the donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your donkey? You have ridden over me since you had me until this day. Have I used to do it like this with you?" And he answered, "No." God miraculously gave the donkey the ability to speak, and through it rebuked the prophet for his cruelty. "What have I done to you that you have whipped me these 3 times? We do not know the actual mechanism by which God gave the donkey the ability to speak, but certainly it was within the Creator's ability. And as we can see, Balaam talked with his donkey about what had just happened. He was so irrational and angry that he responded without hesitation. He seemed unimpressed by a donkey having an intelligent conversation with him. "I wish I had a sword in my hand, for now I would kill you." These were cruel words from an evil prophet. Before and after the time of Balaam, the wicked have threatened to kill God's messengers for telling the truth and trying to prevent his evil. But in the end, the truth will always prevail. Balaam admitted that the donkey was right in this conversation. He had to humble himself before the donkey and admit that he had not been like this before. So perhaps there was a good reason for this change in behavior. Looking back at this encounter, we see that there is some ironic humor involved. Poor Balaam's life was not going very well. Just when he thought he was finally getting the chance to go see King Balak and possibly make his own financial terms, his normally trustworthy donkey let him down. She didn't stay on the road, hurt his foot, and eventually lay down under him. On top of this, he started having a conversation with her, his own ass of hers. Dear listener, one lesson here is that when people begin to disobey God, their lives often spiral out of control. Let's continue reading verses 31 and 33. Then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and he had his drawn sword in his hand. And Balaam bowed down to his face. And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why have you whipped your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out to resist you, for your way is wicked before me. The donkey has seen me, and has then turned away from before me these 3 times. And if she had not left me, I would also now kill you and leave her alive." God noticed Balaam's cruel treatment of his animal and held him accountable for it. God cares how we treat animals. Let's read Proverbs chapter 12, verse 10. "The righteous man takes care of the life of his beast, but the heart of the wicked is cruel. The just or pious man will also show care and compassion for his beast. There is a true sense in which the animal is yours. Proverbs and God gives you authority over the animal, but he must exercise that authority with care and compassion. The evil ones only exploit them." Now, returning to the story of Balaam, we see that the angel of the Lord rebuked Balaam for mistreating his donkey, but especially because Balaam's way was wicked. The word perverse has the connotation of going down the wrong path hastily. This was exactly Balaam's problem. The angel of Jehovah had the ability and authority to bring God's judgment against Balaam, and he almost did. In a sense, the donkey rescued the prophet from judgment. Let's continue 35. "Then Balaam said to the angel of the Lord, I have sinned, because I did not know that you stood before me in the way. But now, if it seems wrong to you, I will return." And the angel of the Lord said to Balaam, "Go with those men, but the word that I say to you, that you will speak." So Balaam was with the princes of Balak. Balaam recognized his sin, and from that moment on he was careful to say only what God allowed him to say, even blessing Israel instead of cursing them as King Balak wanted. Here too, it seems that Balaam is honoring and obeying God. However, once again, when we closely examine the biblical record, we see that this is not true. Although God did not allow Balaam to curse Israel, he found a way to avoid God's command and harm Israel. What he did was advise King Balak to have the women of Moab invite Israelite men to sacrifice to their gods, a form of pagan worship that included ritual prostitution. By seducing the Israelites to sin, the Moabites influenced God to punish them himself. In Numbers chapter 31, verse 16, he says, "Behold, by the counsel of Balaam they caused the children of Israel to transgress against Jehovah concerning Baal Peor, so that there was a mortality in the congregation of Jehovah." Dear listener, as in the case of Balaam, God is going to say no to you the first time. When you think or want to take another path, let it be. Don't insist on following that path, because God may say yes. And what was the end of Balaam? He lost his ministry. They killed him in the time of Joshua, and he ended up being a bad example that God continues to warn his people about centuries later. So we come to the end of this video. We hope that this biblical teaching is a great blessing for your life. Thank you very much for being part of our channel. God bless you greatly. See you in the next video.